Every week, I talk to families who have done their homework on Tampa. They've watched the videos, they've run the numbers, they think they're ready. Almost every single time, one of them is missing at least 2 or 3 costs that could add thousands of dollars a year to their budget. Not because they didn't try, but because most of this stuff, it just isn't talked about openly. That's what this video is for. I'm Tammy Bilder with the Builder Group at eXp Realty, and I've spent over 20 years in the Tampa Bay market doing one thing, making sure my buyers don't get blindsided. I grew up learning that hard lesson as a first-time buyer myself, and I turned all of that into a process built specifically to protect the people I work with. Before we get into the numbers, I want to give you something. I put together a free Tampa Bay relocation guide that covers a lot of questions about relocating to our area. I'll put a link in the comments below for you to grab this free guide. And if you're already further along, whether you're moving in 30 days or you still are just doing your initial research, I get calls and texts every single day from people in your exact situation, and I genuinely love those conversations. Reach out anytime. Call me, text me, or email me. My contact information is in the description too. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with property taxes because this is where the first gap between expectation and reality usually shows up. On a $500,000 home in Tampa Bay, you're realistically looking at somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000 a year in property taxes, depending on the county. Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, they all have slightly different millage rates. And if you're moving from a state like Ohio, New York, or Illinois, this number can feel like a gut punch even when you thought you were prepared for it. But here's another thing that really catches people off guard, and I mean consistently across almost every out-of-state buyer I work with. It's the CDD fee, Community Development District. If you've never bought a home in Florida before, this concept probably doesn't even exist in your vocabulary yet. And that's exactly why it shows up as a shock on the first tax bill. A CDD is essentially a bond that newer communities use to fund infrastructure, roads, drainage systems, retention ponds, and amenities like resort-style pools and fitness centers. The bond gets repaid through a line item on your annual property tax bill, year after year until the bond is retired. Depending on the community, that charge can run anywhere from a couple $100 to $3,500 or more a year on top of your property taxes. And here's the detail that matters most. Not all CDDs are created equal. Some bonds are 25 years old and nearly paid off. Others were just issued and have decades left to run. That's a material difference in your long-term cost of ownership, and it's information you need to know before you fall in love with the house, not after you've already closed on it. Every buyer I work with gets a real tax estimate, not the Zillow estimate, not the actual current tax bill, on every home we consider before we ever write an offer. That's just the baseline of how I do. This is a cost that has genuinely changed the trajectory of more relocation conversations than anything else I've seen in 20 years. And I want to be very direct with you about it because softening it does not protect you. Homeowners insurance in Tampa Bay is not $1,500 a year. It's not $2,000. For most single-family homes in the Tampa Bay area, you should realistically budget around $4,000 to $8,000 annually for homeowners insurance. Homes closer to the coast, homes with older roofs or plumbing, or homes in certain flood risk areas can push that number significantly higher. And in some cases, finding coverage at any reasonable price becomes genuinely difficult. Florida has been through a real insurance market crisis over the past several years. Major, multiple carriers have exited the state entirely. The ones that remain have significantly tightened their underwriting, which means the age and the condition of a home's roof has become one of the most important factors in both insurability and premium costs. A roof that's 15 years old might look perfectly fine. It might not have a single visible issue, but in today's Florida insurance market, that roof could mean dramatically higher premium, a requirement to replace it before coverage is issued, or in some cases, a denial of coverage from standard carriers altogether. That's not a minor detail. That's a potential deal breaker, and it's one most buyers don't discover until they're already emotionally attached to the home. Here's what I do differently. I don't wait until you're under contract to think about insurance. I have an integrated process where we coordinate real insurance quotes early, sometimes before an offer is even written, because I've seen too many transactions fall apart in the final stretch when a buyer found out that the home they mentally already moved into was going to cost $10,000 a year to insure. Catching that early is the difference between a smooth process and a painful one. Here's something that surprises almost every buyer relocating from outside of Florida. Flood insurance is a completely separate policy from your homeowner's insurance. Two different carriers, two different premiums, and one absolutely does not cover what the other doesn't. A lot of people assume their homeowner's insurance policy covers water damage from a storm or flooding. In most cases, it does not. A significant portion of Tampa Bay sits in FEMA designated flood zones. If the home you're purchasing falls within a special flood hazard area, what FEMA classifies as an AE or VE zone, your mortgage lender will require flood insurance as a condition of the loan. That's not negotiable, and it's not something you find out at the end of the process if you're working with someone who's doing their job up front. National flood insurance premium, the federal program, typically runs between $700 and over $2,500 a year for a standard single-family home. But that number is directly tied to the home's elevation relative to its base flood elevation, which is a measurement that comes from a certified elevation certificate. A home that sits even a foot or two below base flood elevation can see premiums that are substantially higher than the baseline estimate. What many buyers don't realize is that flood risk in Tampa Bay isn't purely a coastal issue. Our drainage patterns, soil conditions, and the sheer amount of rainfall we get during hurricane season mean that some properties well inland still carry real flood exposure. FEMA also periodically remaps flood zone boundaries, which means a home that was outside a designated flood zone at its last sale may have been added to one since. A change that directly affects both your insurance requirements and your annual costs. There's also a private flood insurance market that has grown significantly in Florida, and in some cases, private carriers can offer better coverage at more competitive rates than the federal program. That's something worth exploring with an insurance professional who knows the Florida market specifically. And I always make sure my buyers are connected with the right people to have that conversation early. Every home I work on with a buyer gets a flood zone check as a standard part of the process, not an afterthought, a baseline. Once you've got the big fixed costs accounted for, the monthly expenses start stacking up in ways that can genuinely surprise people, especially if you're relocating from the Northeast or Midwest, where summer utility bills just aren't what they are here. Air conditioning in Tampa is not optional, and it is not seasonal. From roughly May through October, you are running your AC almost continuously. And Florida's humidity means your system is working harder than you might expect. A typical family can see electric bills between $200 and $350 a month during peak summer months. Larger homes with older AC systems or homes with less efficient windows and insulation will push that number higher. When I'm helping buyers evaluate home, energy efficiency is part of the conversation, not just aesthetics. Transportation is the other one. Tampa is actually a car-dependent city. For the majority of the areas where buyers are looking, West Chase, Land O'Lakes, Wesley Chapel, Riverview, a car isn't a convenience, it's a necessity. Florida auto insurance rates are higher than the national average, which consistently catches people off guard when they're budgeting their monthly expenses. Factor that in, honestly, especially if you're coming from a state where you may have been paying significantly less. Last category, and I call this one the Florida learning curve because these are the expenses that are easy to overlook individually but add up quickly when you stack them together. HOA fees vary enormously depending on the community. A basic neighborhood might charge $60 to $100 a month for common area maintenance and landscaping. A gated community with a resort-style pool, amenity centers, fitness centers, and on-site security can run $400 to $600 a month. And some of the newer master plan communities in Pasco and Hillsborough counties have both an CDD and an HOA running simultaneously, meaning you're carrying two separate community-related fees on top of everything else. If the home has a pool, and a lot of Tampa Bay homes do, build monthly maintenance into your budget. Professional pool service typically runs $150 to $250 a month, and that's before any equipment repairs, which are not uncommon in Florida's climate. Pool resurfacing is a larger periodic cost that causes homeowners off guard. Lawn care here is also year-round, not a 6-month season. Pest control, particularly for termites and other subtropical pests, is something Florida homeowners treat as a routine annual line item rather than an emergency response. These aren't surprises once you're settled here, but they do catch a lot of people off guard when they're relocating from another area, especially in that first year when they haven't had time to build them into the budget. So that's the honest picture. Property taxes, CDD fees, homeowners insurance, flood coverage, utilities, transportation, and all of the Florida-specific nuances that the listing photos and highlight reels never show you. My entire approach is built around making sure none of this catches you off guard after closing. If you want the free Tampa relocation guide, I will put a link in the comment section below. And when you're ready to have a real conversation about your specific situation with someone who will tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, I will also put my contact information in the comment below. Schedule a free call with me. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And hit that notification bell. I'll see you on the next.